Now, here in Nigeria, a federal high court in Abuja has invalidated the People's Democratic Party's primary election that produced Asue Ighodalo as the PDP's candidate in the forthcoming governorship election in Edo State. The judge held that the PDP's primary, held on February 22nd, failed to comply with the provisions of the Electoral Act 2022 and the party's constitution. The judge faulted electoral body INEC, which didn't file any process during the hearing of the matter, insisting that its input would have made it easier to address the matter. 3 aggrieved ad hoc delegates had sued INEC, the PDP, its national secretary, and the vice chairman, South, as first to fourth defendants.
For us, it's a victory for the rule of law, and we must thank the judiciary, because the judiciary remains the last hope of the common man. The judiciary has said these 378 delegates have been excluded, were unlawfully excluded. So for us, it is victory, and there's need for Edo people to know that as it stands, PDP has no candidates.
This honorable court did not make any order nullifying the primary and the election of Dr. Asue Ighodalo as the PDP candidate who won that primary election by 577 votes. What the court said is that some delegates were excluded. And don't forget that those delegates under section 8414 have no locus to question the primaries, having not been aspirants in the primaries themselves.
I have used the word consistently that authentic delegates voted for me. I used the word consistently. The people that I saw at Samuel Ogunras today were not delegates. They were staff of government. I said that. So as far as I'm concerned, this judgment is for democracy. This judgment is for Edo people. And Edo people should know that by the grace of God, together, we will take our government back from outsiders.
Well, the campaign council of the People's Democratic Party in Edo State has rejected the judgment nullifying the party's primary held in February this year, describing it as a threat to democracy. The Director General of the campaign council describes it as an exercise in futility, saying the judgment cannot stand the test of time. He also hinted that the party would appeal the judgment. He urged members of the party to remain calm as the judgment has not affected the party's flag bearer in any way.
PDP in Edo State, we have a history with Justice Ekwa. You all recall that in the last elections where I contested as the senatorial candidate of the party, the same Justice Ekwa was the one who was giving judgments, even when he knew that the court had no jurisdiction on the issue of party primaries. He went ahead to give judgments. But the law being the law, the appellate courts reversed all those decisions, and the decisions of the appellate courts were further upheld at the Supreme Court. I would have been very, very surprised if Justice Ekwa had done something different, because there were other cases that border on the primaries and pre-election matters, pre-primaries matters that have been in the same federal high court, courts of coordinate jurisdiction, and they've all been decisively dealt with, and they've all been struck out. So looking at the style of Justice Ekwa, this is a man who recently, the NJC, not only did they issue inquiries, they barred him from being elevated to the higher bench. They claim that this judgment which arose today, that it has nullified the candidacy of our candidate, is complete falsehood.
Now, the National Working Committee of the People's Democratic Party says that its candidate in the September 21st, 2024 Edo State governorship election, Asue Ighodalo, remains validly in the race, contrary to alleged erroneous interpretation of a federal high court ruling. Well, the PDP National Publicity Secretary, Debo Ologunagba, in a statement, says the court did not make any order nullifying the primary election of Ighodalo as the party's candidate, as there are no grounds for such. The PDP affirmed that the Congress's and governorship primary that produced Ighodalo were duly and legally conducted in strict compliance with the provisions of the Constitution and Electoral Act. It said no eligible delegate was excluded from the primary election and that the case is even of no moment as the plaintiffs lack the locus to question the exercise. All right, well, that's what's playing out currently in the courts. Rufai?
I mean, so this is not new in Nigerian politics, definitely. I mean, if my memory serves me right, I think Soludo too went through something like this leading up to, his confirmation by his political party in Anambra State, how people filed different and counter-suit, and that was the case of limbo. It just shows that when you now dial back what is happening to our politics, that the judiciary is now playing a lot of role in our politics as against internal workings of democratic outlooks of our political parties. And it speaks volumes about our democracy. So do we want a democracy of the judiciary, or we want a democracy that reflects the will of the people? And I think politicians too should watch it. As regards the ruling, there have been many antecedents. As regards ruling on, the court delving into matters of primaries of political party. Also, when you also look at it deeply, the case of locus was also challenged. This is the very first time, correct me, I might be wrong on this, that I've heard that delegates were actually those that took an aspirant to court, not even the other aspirants in the case. It was a case of now delegates going to court and taking the aspirant. And when you look at all of these cases, it speaks volumes. But the PDP has also reacted. And to a large extent, the PDP is now saying that Asue Ighodalo remains their candidate. Also, you've seen all sorts of interpretation of the court order. I think we must get to the details as regards what the court order says. But if the court order says there's a nullification of the process that led to the emergence of Asue Ighodalo, then as we speak today, those that are saying that the PDP does not have a candidate, they're not far from the truth, because you can't build nothing on nothing. If the court says the process was faulty, definitely the outcome also will be faulty. So probably they might have to go higher, to a higher court, to be able to seek better interpretation as regards this process. But I mean, it's Nigeria. It's what the politicians now want. It's now the reign of the lawyers and the judiciary for our political system. Here will come again. They'll fix themselves out.
Okay, Justice Nyangeko made a point that Asue Ighodalo was not validly elected, that the delegates that voted him as the candidate in the primaries were not the right candidates, and the entire process. Now, what the judge has said is very clear. He says the process was invalid. If the process is invalid, it means, under the rules of interpretation, that the PDP, as of this moment, does not have a candidate for the September 21 election in Edo State. The rule, as established classically by Lord Denning in UAC versus McFoy, is that you can't put something on nothing. However, what is available to Asue Ighodalo and the PDP is to go to the appeal court, the Court of Appeal. The Federal High Court is not the last place in the matter. They can still go to the Court of Appeal. The second point is that INEC, Justice Nyangeko, raised the point about INEC. Now the question to ask is, was INEC joined in the matter by the three plaintiffs? Because, if INEC was joined, INEC would have made its own representation. But of course, INEC is now duty-bound to seek even further clarification as regards the effect of this particular ruling. Now, it is not up to members of the PDP or members of the APC to offer an interpretation. Only a court of law, of competent jurisdiction, can offer an interpretation. So all those statements
by Philip Shaibu, by Danobi, who was talking about internal democracy within the party. All those are just political statements. You know, they can go to a higher court to seek an interpretation. The other question that have been posed by Justin Yangeko's case is the delegates, the 378 delegates that are purportedly excluded. Now, are they statutory delegates? Because there's another case determined by Justice A.M. Liman of the Federal High Court of Kano State, as he then was, you know, saying that statutory delegates cannot be excluded from primaries, from congresses. So when Philip Shaibu comes forward and says he has been vindicated, are those his delegates who have gone now to court, are they statutory delegates? That's the emphasis there. But I imagine that Justice Ekwa, you know, will have looked into those matters. Now, the other issue that is raised, which may form the basis for the PDP Edo State and Asoe Ighodalo going to the Court of Appeal, is simply whether this is a case of internal affairs of political party. Because the argument has been put up that the court cannot inquire into, you know, the processes, the internal processes of a political party. The caveat to that is where it is established that that process within the political party, you know, injures the rights of other people. And that was why I brought up the, you know, ruling by Justice A.M. Liman on the status of statutory delegates. But we have not seen the end of the matter. Those who are jubilating, casting themselves as winners, and saying some people have lost out, even the APC in a triumphant mood, as Asoe Ighodalo, to join Monday Okpebolo, you know, ahead of the September 21 election. That's tongue-in-cheek. What we want in Edo State is a proper competition. So the people who are saying that, you know, the court has not ruled, no, the court was very clear. But they have the option of, you know, appealing the ruling, going to the court. And then, of course, the other matter, the other residual matter, has to do with the timetable for the election. INEC had released a timetable for Edo election. The primaries were supposed to be concluded in April, and it was also in April that INEC published the final list of candidates in that Edo election. But INEC is also a creation of law, and it is bound to respect the rule of law. So this is a developing story. I don't think that people who have reached final conclusions, you know, are on terra firma, you know, in that regard.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Abati, because I, for one, look forward to the day where we don't have to become de facto legal experts via Google to just understand basic happenings in Nigerian politics. But this is where we are. The political gymnastics always play out in the courts, and this is repeating itself. It's concerning for PDP that history has not yet taught them the lesson that it was just recently that they lost 16 lawmakers in Plateau State because of issues concerning party primaries. However, this is a litmus test, that shows us the state of internal party democracy. Because if we can't get it right internally within our own parties, then what is the message we're putting across to the nation when it comes to the actual elections themselves? The body language from the PDP is also concerning because it almost seems as though by dismissing this and saying, oh, you know, we'll take it to the Court of Appeal, oh, we'll take it to the Supreme Court, is almost history repeating itself again when we look at the case of Caleb Mufwang again in Plateau State. Because they know that when it comes to internal party primaries, the matters cannot go very far. So that's concerning, is that we're now seeing a culture of taking advantage of what happens at the primary stage, because we know that at the end of the day, nobody can do anything about it. There's no court that can interfere in it, because the statement from the PDP continues again to harp on the fact that, well, at the end of the day, whether or not there were irregularities, these are internal party issues emerging from primaries, therefore there is no jurisdiction around them. So we do, my prayer really is that, again, I look forward to the day where, in order for us to understand the happenings of Nigerian politics, we don't have to become legal experts.